Put them up for you. All right, so some reviewing. I hope that you've noticed what I'm doing is very particular, that I am hitting something, and then we're moving on. And then now this will be the third time I've gone back over this, right? We're hitting it, and reviewing it, and then I hit you some new stuff. Are you with me? Because again, there's a lot of stuff in this chapter. What I encouraged you yesterday, making sure you're reading, right? Using those questions, right? Spending the time. Again, I know I said this 1,000 times, but if you try and wait until the night or two before the test to learn all this stuff, you're toast. It'll absolutely slaughter you. Okay? So, talk to me. You have to look at the diagram. Central nervous system. 2 pieces. What are they? Brain and spinal cord. Good. Peripheral nervous system is what?
Brain nerves, cranial nerves.
Cranial nerves, which are nerves coming directly from the brain, and spinal nerves. From the spinal cord, the nerves coming out to the arms, the legs, the torso, all those places. Right? Good. From those nerves, you can break them into sensory and motor. Right? Sensory, motor. Sensory being, of course, the signals coming to the brain. Motor being signals going away from the brain. Okay? From that motor division, you can break it into 2 pieces. You can say autonomic, which is all of the things that control the stuff you don't think about. The heart beating, your brain functioning, your muscles digesting. Okay? That's the automatic things, the autonomic nervous system. And the second piece of that motor division is the somatic nervous system, the thing that controls the skeletal muscles. Voluntarily bend your arm, blink your eyes. Cool? Any questions there? We ran through yesterday some pieces with the, what are these called? All these different pieces? Yeah, all together. Not the nerves. We're almost there. Keep going back. Neuroglia, right? These are the pieces that support the neurons. Remember, the neurons are the actual important parts of the nervous system. But these are the pieces that help the nervous system function. So, we've got this piece here called the astrocyte. What does that do? Binds. Sure, supports, right? This is our supporting structure, right? You can see it's like holding things together. Okay? Then we've got oligodendrocytes. What do they do? Produce myelin. Beautiful. But where do they produce it in? Central or peripheral nervous system? Central nervous system. What is it that produces it in the peripheral nervous system? Schwann cells. That fun. I like both of those words. Oligodendrocyte and Schwann cell. I just like those words. It's good stuff, isn't it? The next one is microglial cells. Little snowflake-looking things there. What do? Bacteria, phagocytized bacteria, right? And also other waste products. They're like the cleanup crew in that nervous system. And then these guys appear, the ependymal cells are like skin. It's like an epithelial tissue. It's not really. But it's like an epithelial tissue that forms these fluid-filled spaces in the brain, in the spinal cord, which we'll talk much more about those. Okay? No, this is just nervous system. But you got that idea, absolutely. Okay? Good, so those are our neuroglia. Here's our picture of that actual nerve cell, right? The main pieces, the dendrocytes up on top, the axon that comes down here, the cell body that's in the middle. I am not as like these little green things that are in the cell body, the chromosomatic substance. I'm not too worried about that. But we've talked a lot more about the pieces of the axon, right? We've talked about this little piece up top here. We're actually going to mention that today, called the axon hillock, Hillock, where these nerve impulses start. Then we have the myelin that are covering that axon. And what do we call those little islands in between the myelins, little spots in between? The nodes of Ranvier. You got it. And that's where that signal's jumping, right? Sends it quicker. Sends it faster down the nerve. How about that? It goes quicker. We have these little guys on the end here. These are the synaptic knobs. This is where that synapse, right, between one axon of one neuron and the dendrite of another neuron. Or it could be where the axon comes into a muscle, right? Remember the neuromuscular junction that we learned in the last chapter. Sir?
So I always thought, like, people say, like, if you want to do something, the nerves travel from your head to your finger until your finger takes that.
Okay.
But that is not traveling. It's what's in there, in that is traveling through those, right?
Yes, we're going to talk about how the transmission goes today. Yeah, but this is the structures that are doing these transmissions that we'll talk about today. Absolutely. Okay. Other questions? We're good so far? Good. This is all good review. Had a little close-up of this Schwann cell where you could see that it looks like, I always think of a carpet roll. What did you guys say yesterday?
It looks like a spring.
A fruit roll-up. I liked that analogy. It's just like a fruit roll-up. It literally wraps up the axon. And that can be thicker or it can be thinner. Just depends on how much insulation the body wants to give. And I say the more myelin, usually the quicker the things work. The faster you're going to send that signal down. There are. And also the ones that are moving toward your extremities. Like it's a long way from here to here, right? So you want definitely myelinated axons to do that work. Sir?
Do you know in like old cars with plugs for the car chargers, you could push it in to use it to light your cigarette?
Yep.
That's what that is.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I'm with you. Sure.
Yeah, that.
I'm with you. That little coil, absolutely. Good. All right, so today we're going to move on to talking about how the signal works. Well, we've already talked about the synapse, so let me mention that one real quick. This is the last thing we talked about yesterday, right? Where we had the signal coming to the end of the neuron, the axon. And what do we call these blue dots here? These are the neurotransmitters, right? Because you see there's space in between. There's space right here that's actually not touching one axon to the dendrite, right? So these neurotransmitters are what send that signal down, saying, hey, you, come on, contract. Not contract, I'm not a muscle anymore. Send the signal, right? And it sends it to this person, and then she then to this person, and on down the road.
That's what the brain sends neurotransmitter?
Well, no, the neurotransmitter is just to move the signal between this tiny little gap, that synaptic gap. So we're going to pause for a second here. Okay, so no, it's this, the neurotransmitter is just to get across that little area. We haven't talked about the whole down the line yet. We'll get to that in a moment. Okay, so you did some reading last night, right? About resting potential. Can anybody give me just a little brief, what does that mean when I say resting potential? I hope you all read this. Just again, don't explain the whole thing. I'm just looking for what is that? Even the words, just define these words. What are they meaning? What do you think? Beautiful. So there is a difference in charge. So here's, on this picture, you can see a neuron, right? We're going to look just at the top one first, okay? And we have this flow of ions. You can see that there are potassium ions here, and there are sodium ions here, okay? And they're flowing in between. Remember back in chapter 3, we talked about those gates in the cell membranes that will allow things to move through, to diffusion, moving through the cell membrane. So these guys will move in and out. And what we end up happening is we get more of the potassiums outside and more of the sodiums on the inside. Or did I just mix that up? Did I mix it up? Where's my picture here? Sorry. So it moves from a higher potassium to a lower. Excuse me, you can see the potassium comes out, sodium comes in. They're both positive, so it messes me up. So I apologize. What you end up with is this piece right here, this 70 millivolt, negative 70 millivolt charge inside the neuron. Yes, ma'am? Beautiful. What they've done is here, they just simply are talking about these positive ions. What they're ignoring the negatives. You have just more positives on the outside than you have on the inside. So therefore, if you have a standard amount of negatives, and the positives are moving around with more positive on the outside, you'll end up with a generally overall positive outside, negative inside. Yes. Yes. Well, they're both positive ions. These are both calcium and potassium are both positive ions. But there's just more positives outside than there are inside. And so overall, we have a more negative charge on the inside. Are you with me? And this is a number. Like one of the questions I'm going to ask you, like I told you on your test, I'm going to ask you to write me an essay about how this works. That's a number I want you to know. That resting potential. Negative 70 millivolts. It's a very small amount of current, right? It's not like I'm going to come up to CJ and like just shock him with my resting potential, because it's a very small amount. But it is there. Okay? And there's a little pump here. I covered it up with my little red scribble here. But that pump is helping to move and keep that resting potential